because it's too shit, so I don't have to worry. And everyone can hear our audio now as well, so it's great. I love StreamYard for that. I don't have to worry about
No, this is not the sound of the pub.
Actually, I think this is on my jukebox. No joke. I'll only leave it for about 20 seconds. Because we've got a lot to cover in not much time. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I am the Sarcastic Barman. Welcome to the channel. And yes, I do know with the hot mics before. We didn't care because I've got too much to deal with on tonight because there's a lot of things to get through. So as many of you will know, and hopefully all of you do know, that Eastern Europe's gone to shit at the moment. I think that's putting it a bit politely. Joining me tonight, I've obviously got the one, the only, the amazing Colon, who's going to be the voice of reason because... as always, I'm inebriated, which is the very polite way of putting that I've had far too many Jaeger bombs. Mainly cheersing the World War, let's go and hide in my cellar. Joining us is the awesome Clap Jack as well, who's going to be the voice of the rough area, who's going to get to it. And a special guest called Mr. M, who is, well, he's a serving person. We'll go through the intros first. I'll start with Colon, as always, who gets to say hello to everyone. Colon, how are you doing?
Good evening, Mr. Barman, and make mine triple Hennessy, please, because this shit is going to hell and back.
It was very worrying waking up on this phone, and I've been very tempted to drink most of the day, considering I've got an SAS base up the road from me and another military base down the road from me. So, yes, that was worrying.
Get the booze in.
Yeah. Mr. Clapperjack, how are you doing, Squire?
Clapperjack reporting for duty, comrade Barman.
I love the fact that joke. That is perfect. For everyone who doesn't know, Clapperjack is originally from Belarus and has left Belarus. You can check out the Shill stream for that one about 3 weeks ago for the leaving Belarus. And yeah, so you've had all this fun before, basically, haven't you?
Oh yeah, I had the preview basically.
I was going to say that was the polite way of putting it, really. Oh, love it. Absolutely love it. It's the world has gone crazy. Thirdly, joining us is a mate of mine who I've known for, Jesus, 25 years?
I'd say closer to 28, maybe, yeah, 27, 28, Mr. Barman.
That
it is
scary.
a bit scary.
Far too long.
It is, yeah.
So, yeah, just a little bit of background on myself. I'm not going to go into too many details, clearly, for obvious reasons. I've been a serving member of the armed forces for over 15 years. And yeah, I've worked with various NATO countries, served in Afghanistan, done bits and pieces throughout the world. And yeah, it's very interesting times. It's caught a few people by surprise, I should say. I will say before we go into too much detail, I'm going to caveat what I'm going to say for this evening for obvious reasons. And also these are my own thoughts. They're clearly not the thoughts of the people I work with or the people I work for.
Yeah,
just to clear that up.
I was going to say, if you hadn't have said it, I would. Any views that Mr. M gives are his own and are not reflective of any of the British military branches, the British government, or anything like that as a serving member. I was hoping to get a couple of ex-serving members on, but they all seem to be busy. As I recall, the last one. He's going out on the piss tonight, so I can let him off with that one. I was like, you bastard!
Hey, Barman, just remember one thing. I'm freaking ex.
You are as well.
I'm a 22-year vet. There you go. And no, I don't mean playing with animals.
I had two ex-RAFs hopefully lined up as well, but unfortunately they couldn't join us, which was a bit of a downer because they would have given, because both of them served in Germany as well, which would have been a great sort of the two sort of generations to see where you got Mr. M now who's serving and things compared to the Cold War ones, which I thought would have been a great sort of interjection.
Germany was great, by the way. I was there for 2 years.
Nice. Well, not nice because obviously the reasons why you were in Germany. But yeah, I suppose we better open this chat. And I've got a question for Clapperjack to start with. There will be questions from Mr. as well. If anyone's got any questions, well, tag me in them. I'll get them up, and we'll see what we can do.
Barman,
Yes.
if I may,
Yeah,
Green Dragon posted something in the chat, and it's like spot on. Let's just put it that way.
Oh, there he is. Living
You've got the
Belarus.
StreamYards link. Go for it.
I have. I've just posted it on the thing. Leaving Belarus is the best thing you could do if you're Belarusian. Yes,
Correct.
I would agree.
Unfortunately, that's correct.
Yeah. So yeah, I think we roughly touched on it before the stream started, Clapper, just before Mr. M joined. But I was saying that if the Ukrainian rebels, the pro-Russian side, had gone and taken more power, do you think that Ukraine would have turned out to be the new Belarus in the way that the takeovers sort of happened?
Well, see, Barman, let's start off with the fact that they're not rebels; they're Russians. Like they've been Russians. The way that this whole thing started, off the bat, those regions, yes, they disagreed with the Maidan thing that happened, and they kind of started doing their separate thing. But what Russia did is moved in and took advantage of that, and that's how those regions were created. They pretty much took control of over this little nuance that happened, so that they can just like latch onto the Ukraine, so that they can like prevent them from leaving or doing anything, really, like going to NATO or et cetera, et cetera. But would it become the second Belarus? I probably doubt it. I wouldn't think so.
Do you think there's too much of a Western support within the country?
Well, Ukrainians had enough with the Soviet stuff. That's when if you go back far enough, when the Maidan happened in 2014, those guys didn't spare any moments taking on those statues of Stalin and smashing them to the ground. Because, as I said before in the previous streams, but I'm going to reiterate, us Eastern Europeans, ex-USSRs, we are sick of this USSR, neo-USSR shit that Putin is trying to enforce on all of us. And he's doing it.
Yeah, you make a really good point there. I mean, having worked with certainly people from Romania as a great example, they are very, very much in the same mindset as what you've just said there.
Well, we kind of like it's interesting. It's not like a hive mind, but we are sort of tuned into this one single wave that's like, and we are like in sync with each other. That's kind of, yeah, that's true.
Yeah, and you make a really good point. You say 2014, but if you're being realistic, we have to go all the way back to probably the mid 1980s when the old USSR was starting to unwind itself.
Crumble.
And that was probably down to Western influence as well. People saw that generally things were better in the Western sphere at that point in time. So there was a lot of influence, a lot of stuff going on underground, stuff that you wouldn't necessarily hear about in the Cold War, but was happening. And slowly and surely, things start to unwind themselves. And yeah, the Cold War never really ended as such, in my opinion. I just feel. Come on, sorry, carry on.
I'm going to like sorry, I'm going to even topple that. To go further than that and say that the Soviet Union never fell apart. It may have fallen apart physically, but not in the minds of those that kept it going.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. You certainly within that old ex-KGB / USSR almost militaristic way of leadership and how things were set in stone and how they were as organizations is still very much present there, certainly in Russia today. And even to a degree in some of those countries that disbanded themselves from Russia, there's still lots of that little influences still in the background taking place in those countries, just maybe not on the whole population.
Yes, definitely. The mindset of being part of that union for, well, best part of 40, 50 years, though, isn't it? It's an entire generation brought up in that, where some of the parents, yes, they would have believed in that sort of ideal, and yes, some wouldn't. But it changes the mindset of an entire generation. I've got a point when I just raised from Tusk to keep us on track, but slightly different. I was really shocked by this. Irish Demon said just yesterday that it was all a bluff and Russia didn't have the resources to invade. I don't know what to believe anymore. And I have that feeling. I never thought that Russia would actually commit to a full invasion of the Ukraine. I did feel like it was a bluff and a push forward that, yes, would leave Russia out if they didn't give into it. But was anyone else on the panel shocked that they did invade in the full sense that they are? It's not a covert little operation or anything like that. It's a full-on invasion.
It's a full-on invasion.
To be up from where I'm sat now, I think I was a little bit surprised that he's gone full hog straight away. We thought it might sort of be a classic mission creep style campaign, a little bit like what certain countries have done elsewhere in the world. I'm not going to mention names. I'm sure you're intelligent blokes to work it out yourself. But yeah, I mean, certainly, when he went to Donbass region, that kind in 2014, you kind of saw that, the writing was on the wall there. And you look at the massive geopolitical picture, it was crucial for Vladimir Putin to try and make sure that he had some sort of presence in the Black Sea region. So Crimea was always going to be on the cards. And if he was trying to create a land bridge from Russia to Crimea, I could have definitely seen that coming straight away. However, to actually invade Ukraine from 3 different sides, that certainly did take me by surprise, and I think that probably has taken other people.
Really?
I think so. Yeah, by surprise.
Well, the Sebastopol region down there is very important to him because that's where he's got his main ships to try and get out into the Med. So
Correct.
it's the way that Russia needs to actually be a dominant power to get into the Med, to get down into the Gulf and spread out that way. He can't just have his ports up in the North Sea trying to get around. So
exactly.
Yeah,
you can see why.
You've said something really, really important there. People don't necessarily think about this. The high north region, the northern ports, you've got to remember they're sometimes ice locked for 3 to 4 months on an annual basis. So by opening that Black Sea region area, it's really, really important for the Russian economy, and for them to export oil, natural resources. I could go on. So you got to almost take a full circle swing and look at it from their viewpoint, in the fact that all these influences are being taken away from them slowly but surely. People, and from the USSR backwards, and that's where we're at now, really. 2 seconds, my phone is going. I'm going to mute myself.
That's all right. Just while you raise that point of oil, though, there was, I've had the news on all day today. There was a lady on, I believe she was a representative for the EU. I very apologize. There's been that many people on today and that many interviews. I missed the part she was from. It was live from Brussels. But she raised a point that made me sort of like go, the fuck? When she said that, yes, we are prepared to drop our oil imports and gas imports, and we have contingencies in plan, basically, for that from Russia. And I was like, well, 40% of gas and oil for Europe comes from Russia. So what contingencies could you have in place? Could that just be a bluster to make Russia think, oh, they could drop oil, which would damage our economy even more? I mean, the Russian stock market opened at a 45% drop this morning, which is just
it's tanking.
Yeah. It's
all the sanctions as well that have been going on.
It's actually tanked twice. It started tanking when Putin made that thing where he pretty much acknowledged and forced his cronies to say that Donbass and all that stuff belongs to Russia and is pretty much a part of Russia. That's what it tanks first. It went down, I've seen like to 20%, and everything else was in red. Then it recovered a little bit to like 5%, 8%, 10%. And then when this whole thing started this morning, it just like poof, 50% down.
I know you sent me earlier today the stock market list, and it was literally, I mean, I'm sure
just the beginning.
50%, 20%, 15%, 35%. And these are different ones. You're like, wow, that is ridiculous.
The entire Russian stock market looks like this right now.
But the scary thing is that will knock on to the general Russian public, who
they're protesting right now.
Yeah, they're not very happy
in every major city.
The protests that we've seen, obviously, I have to be that pain in the arseness that all we've seen process-wise is the BBC coverage. I've not looked at
Sky. Very true.
But the ones that have been protesting which I believe, have just been arrested.
Yep.
They don't seem to feck about in Russia. It's just, oh, you're protesting, get in the van.
It's pretty much like in my country. It's the same thing. You fuck around, you find out.
Yeah. Which is,
But Barman, a little bit like before I actually lose this thread that I've been holding on to. First of all, Crafty Keela, hi, nice to meet you again in the chat. The thing about the Soviets keeping this whole thing going, from my childhood, a little bit of a snapshot, right? Me as a kid that's been growing up in the 90s, I got this fantastic opportunity to see Cartoon Network undubbed in English, and I've learned things about the West and America and how they do things, and I learned this thing called a yard sale, right? And I was living in a private house at that point with my parents, so I got some stupid things with my friends, and I went outside and I like put them on a little table, and I was selling them. It was a little cute thing, a garage sale. And this woman comes down the street and she stops, and she's been like an NPC loading for like a solid minute, looking at my things, not even like looking away from anything else, just on my things. And then she looks up to me, well, down because I was smaller, and she's like, "Who told you could sell these things?" I was like, "Okay, my mom, dad, why?" She was like, "Ah, okay then." And then she walked off. And that thing like really imprinted inside of my head, because I didn't quite understand that the people that lived in the Soviet Union and the countries that became what they became after, they didn't even understand what a yard sale was, and that children have the ability or the right to actually sell their things.
That's nuts.
That's how fucked it was for me. And that's what I dubbed when like I learned about it, that experience that I learned. It's the tumor, the Soviet Union tumor of the brain. It sounds better in Russian, but it just, I'm interpreting right, so it doesn't sound as good.
Self-thought, you've just put into my head there.
Yeah.
It's it's definitely a different mindset.
It's a little bit soul crushing, I'm not gonna lie, but it's something. I'm still here. I made it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and one other thing I noticed as well is a lot of his, a lot of the Russian tact at the moment is they're trying to say it's all NATO provoked. So they're saying that they're saying that they've always asked for one country to be separate, one country separation from the Russian and NATO pacts. Now they're saying if Ukraine joined NATO, then there would be that separation, but Ukraine hasn't joined NATO.
See, the most interesting thing about that is that Putin has been screeching about this whole thing, that there's security problems with Ukraine going into NATO. That's actually horseshit, because a lot of countries that are bordering right next to Russia, they're like Estonia, I believe.
You've just moved me on to the really important thing next. But carry on, I'll explain it in a minute.
He was saying that the rocket launch. He was saying that if NATO moves in and they put rockets in Ukraine, that the time is of rockets reaching Moscow in case of an emergency or war or whatever is going to decrease, and that's why it's a problem. But I saw this thing, a guy doing analytics and like math and stuff. He was like, no, what that makes no sense. The Baltic states that are a little bit more up, like above Belarus, they have a far closer reach time than Ukraine. What are you talking about? You're full of shit.
Correct. It's the Baltic states. Really, you've got this Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania, and they all border pretty much either Belarus or Russia itself.
Mm-hmm.
And but what else as well? There's also we also seem to forget, and this is a hugely important thing I'm going to mention now, is the Kaliningrad Peninsula. In terms of, does everyone know where I'm on about? As in Kaliningrad. Is it, Mr. Barman? Is it possible at all on this to bring up a map? Mr. Bartender, is it possible to bring up a map, or is it impossible?
I forgot I muted myself. I'm pulling up
Barman, Bloody Mary, please.
Let me take a screen print of that, and I'll pull it up on the screen. 2 seconds.
Yeah, so I just want to draw your attention to something, and it'll probably open it up to your viewers a little bit better.
Yeah,
so
I take it we're looking at Kaliningrad by Lithuania, yeah?
Yeah, so sort of slap between Poland and Lithuania. Yeah, that's a hugely important piece, because I mean, if you look at how close that is to Belarus, that starts to possibly ring alarm bells straight away.
Right.
I'm not going to go into any more detail of that. I'll let your viewers work that out for themselves.
Intro set image 2. Sorry, I've got to. See, this is why normally I have this amazing person called Colon who sorts all this stuff out for me.
Yeah,
but you're practicing.
I am practicing because I can't rely on you all the time. Kaliningrad, there we go.
Brilliant.
Save. I'll just move. Oh no, wrong thing to move. I want to move me. Oh god damn it, me. There we go. Move me out the way.
That's perfect. So that red pointer there. So for those who don't know, for the audience, Kaliningrad is it gives it gives Russia essentially a gateway to the Baltic Sea, and that allows them good transport and port links. But if you have a look just to the right of there, you can see that the area between Poland and Belarus and Lithuania is actually very small geographically. Does that stand out?
Okay, I got you.
Does that stand out to you guys?
Very.
I can get that closer if you want.
So if you want to, yeah, zoom in a little bit.
2 seconds. I'll pull that out now on Paint.
I already know what you mean. I'm not going to say anything though.
Yeah, I'm not going to go into any details. I would hope that people who are watching this are intelligent enough to work it out for themselves.
Yeah, fair play. My audience are quite good. I can't give them too much shit.
So, ironic thing is, okay, no, go on. Sorry,
but no, the Baltic states, they were smart to join NATO from their perspective. When you look at, they were newly formed independent sovereign states, and they, at the time of their formation, they probably weren't at full strength militarily. But it is what it is, and it's just something to draw yourselves into, maybe a little bit away from what's going on at the moment in Ukraine, but nonetheless still something very, very important to consider in the bigger picture. That's all I'm going to say on that for now.
Yeah.
Can I elaborate?
Go on.
Because this thing that you mentioned and pointed out, yes, people hopefully might figure it out. Should I ruin the surprise?
You can, because it's not me saying it then. So that's absolutely fine.
That's all right.
And you're from Belarus.
Yeah, we've been speculating that this event might actually happen in somewhere in the near future, and we've been discussing this for years in advance, way before any of this thing happened in my country. Then with Russia, with everything before Putin went crazy, we already knew somehow, instinctively, that Putin might actually, along with Lukashenko, attempt to join this little piece of land in between Belarus and Kaliningrad to form this tunnel, so that Russia has full control of this part of land. Because whilst the two countries that are separating this tunnel, well, not separating the tunnel, there's no tunnel. There's two countries in the way.
Yeah,
and because of that, the Kaliningrad is
part of NATO.
Isolated. Yes, and because of that, Kaliningrad is isolated, and that gives Putin insecurity, because he feels like both of those countries can collapse Kaliningrad from both sides. And we've been predicting this shit years in advance, like regular people. I remember I've been talking with this with my friends, with my family members, with everybody, and literally every single person agreed that this actually like is 80% achievable by these two ass wipes.
Yeah, I mean, let's just hope that the buck stops with the Ukraine, and he's not trying to go for this, leaving the legacy sort of thing. But we can only speculate at this time. Nobody knows
True.
except him himself.
There's a
Well, if we
question
go
for
back
you,
into,
Mr.
go on,
Go on,
do the question
Colin.
first.
Go, Colin.
Okay, no, I was just going to say that when you actually think about this this strip of land area, it's exactly what they did, what they had set up between East and West Germany at the time.
Exactly.
There was like a long run, but it was the European side to get to Berlin. Right, so we could actually help out that way. So Putin's got this idea that it's the other way around. He needs that link into Kaliningrad to actually survive and restock through Belarus, but he's got Lithuania and Poland in the way. So how does he sort that out? He can't without getting them to redefine the borders and give him a strip of land. It's
But
not
what
going to
does that
happen.
do? It's not going to happen, because what does that do to the Baltic states?
That could be the long-term threat of I will surrender all my claims on Ukraine if I can have that path of land here and that path of land there. And as we know from how well European does appeasements, because I've looked at this today, and I think I said it off screen, but all I'm getting is Czechoslovakia vibes, because I feel like Ukraine is that sacrificial. Oh yeah, you can. All right then, Germany, you can have that little bit there. Oh, you were very naughty. You invaded the rest of it. Well, you better not invade Poland. Well, NATO are dumping all their troops there at the moment, and I just have that horrible feeling that we're drawing the line one too late.
I actually have quite the rant coming about that.
Oh,
but first, Mr. Andrat said that he was like worried about me, and like I'm appreciated, very appreciated. I'm fine. I'm good.
Yeah, I was going to say you're out of the country and things now, aren't you?
If we think about this, it's actually a good thing you did it when you did, because if you did it you wouldn't be even getting out of Moscow.
Nope.
Yeah.
Nope. I foresaw this entire scenario happening.
I've got a question for Mr. M. I don't know how well you'll be able to answer it, but in your personal opinion, what do you think it would take for NATO, the United Kingdom, or any other country to send troops into the Ukraine? Or do you think it's a beyond possibility thing, in your personal opinion? I have to phrase that because of things.
Yeah, no, understandable, and it is purely my opinion. I think it would have to be a breach of Article 5 in some way, shape, or form, realistically. But then I don't know. I'm just a bloke on the end of a phone, and that's my opinion. Ukraine aren't part of NATO as it stands at this moment in time, and unless Russia does something ridiculously further stupid, I think what they've done is daft. Don't get me wrong. I can't see. I can see them doing what they're doing at the moment, which is putting really, really harsh sanctions on. But in my opinion, again, putting sanctions on Russia is only going to draw closer to China anyway, in terms of where they get their financial support from, and in terms of trade and all that other good stuff that goes with it. That's just my opinion.
For anyone who doesn't know Article 5, if I'm just checking correctly, that would be an attack on another NATO member?
That's correct. Article 5 is an attack. An attack on one is an attack on all, essentially.
To clarify that, just in case I was wrong, and make sure that anyone in the audience wasn't sure could know.
So this brings us to the age-old problem of United Nations, which Ukraine is a part of, but they're not part of NATO. So that needs so United Nations gets in there and goes, we need help. And NATO goes, well, we'd like to help, but we can only send peacekeeping forces in to blockade and to stop the Russians advancing anymore, as long as you're talking to them. Yeah, it's going to turn into a bit of a shit show.
Actually, but before we go further, because I'm going to lose all this information if we keep going. Colin, what you said is correct, and there's a problem. Like the United Nations is playing by the rules. This whole thing, oh, you're supposed to be in NATO for us to help you. You know, you should understand. You know, we can't really do anything about it. And the flip side of that is Putin. He doesn't give a shit about rules. He doesn't give a fuck about anything. He's just gonna do whatever he wants. He's gonna attack anyone unprovoked. It doesn't matter to him. He started a full-on invasion and nobody flinched.
You made a really good point there. I mean, we can go all the way back to the Salisbury Novichok case, where essentially British civilians were harmed because of the actions of potentially what they did, you know, in trying to take out a former Russia KGB spy. You know, that some people, I mean, you'd imagine if that had happened on US soil, I think the outcry would have been far greater. I don't know, but you know, it's an interesting one to think about.
And see, to keep this whole thing going, like I'm trying to grab things like while I listen to you and like keep them going. See the problem with the response, right? The problem is that he's able to do it only because the Europeans and the Western world does not care. Well, you care, okay? You care, but you don't care enough to do something serious. Like, for example, I was expecting that, okay, so this is a full-on invasion, so this is probably it. So Russia's probably going to get switched off from SWIFT, banking systems and whatever. So it's going to be proper response, because Biden and America, they promised all that, and like, oh, sanctions that you've never even seen before. It's going to like be devastating. And then I look at Trump's Biden's speech, and he just walks out and is like, yeah, we're gonna like introduce sanctions, and when are they gonna be working? Oh yeah, just come back to me in a month. I'm like, oh my freaking god.
I do feel like sanctions can be, if employed directly, a good deterrent. But once Russia's pulled the trigger like this, the NATO deterrents are nothing. They don't have any teeth to them because they already know the repercussions of what they're doing. Clive Wells brought up a good point. The UN won't do anything as Russia is a permanent member of the Security Council, which
exactly.
it puts on the line at this point that with the UN being everything it is, that it's supposed to stop things like this, or at least narrow stuff like this. Should Russia, in theory, we know it's not going to happen, but lose their permanent veto abilities on the UN because of actions like this?
On this subject, they will be blanked from doing veto. But they have a massive partner in crime over there who will veto anything that goes on. Yes, China will be involved in that side of it because this is actually beneficial to them in for other reasons over in the Taiwan area. That's a data. And obviously,
well, see, from the way that I see it, it's if you look at the GDP to Russia's, I believe, and that's why I believe he is trying to play this little silver line in between Russia and the West. When Putin came to the Olympics, he was like, yeah, I'm totally supporting you, my guy. And then his other officials, China officials, they were like, we support sovereignty of every single country, including Ukraine, which is ironic because Taiwan again. And I believe it's not beneficial for him to leap in and try to defend Putin, help Putin, whatever, because it would be more beneficial for him to see Putin fall and take his place later. He's playing the long game, not the short game like Putin.
Makes sense.
That's what I think, at least.
It's a good point.
Yeah, fair point. Okay. I can see to that bit.
Can anyone on the panel see Russia pushing that slight bit too far and maybe stepping into Poland or anything like that, causing the NATO to come in? Or do we feel like their troops are under the very, very strict orders that you don't fucking step over that border at all?
I'm pretty sure no.
I don't
Because
think he'll cross that line. I think he'd be.
no.
I mean, like I said earlier, what he's done is daft. It's beyond comprehension. But that would
It's
just be
calculated.
that would be a complete step too far. And
Mhm.
I think there's certain Western leaders who would probably, as we've been here before in the 1940, that would probably be the catalyst of all things. If I'm being brutally honest, again, my opinion, but I think that would be the ultimate catalyst if he was to step, take one step too far.
Yeah.
It's actually interesting that you mentioned something about backstabbing, right? No?
No,
No,
I
it
Or
didn't.
is it,
wasn't backstabbing. No, it was just more of, there's a line, certainly as I mentioned with the Article 5 piece earlier, there's a line there, and if you cross it, you've broken the rule, the rules as far as NATO is concerned. So,
I guess I just misheard, but or maybe I've heard what I wanted to hear. I guess because I was thinking about on the whole backstabbing thing because there was reports of on Twitter, so take it with a grain of salt, that the Polish government received offers from Putin and his people to actually take Ukraine together.
Wow.
The whole pact, the same, pretty much the same. But I'm not saying it's not fact. It's just some douchebag wrote it on Twitter.
Oh, fair enough. I was
right,
going to say
yeah.
that would be completely 1930s vibes then.
And
Would be
completely
scary.
Would probably not
nuts.
be completely out of the question.
I don't
Yeah.
think we're quite there yet. However,
No.
this is still very much a huge storm in the teacup, and ultimately, people should still be very concerned. I wouldn't say World War III, blah blah blah, but people should definitely be concerned, and they should definitely be paying attention to the larger geopolitical issues that are taking place right now. If
Yeah.
they're not,
And not Kim Kardashian's ass
if they're
Oh
not,
in
God. No.
relationship with whatever his face is, Kanye
Yeah.
West.
It's actually been a very interesting day having the news on all day and some of the bits. And there was a bit of time I was watching it. I think I turned the news on about 11 after I finished shopping, and you're watching the people overlooking St. Michael's Square, that gorgeous cathedral in the background, and they're wearing normal clothes. And it was about 2 o'clock or so. And considering at 11 o'clock, they were saying, well, yeah, they're about 3 hours from Kyiv. And I'm like, oh, that's crazy. About
Mhm.
2 o'clock, the sirens went off and stuff like that. The next time
Yep.
you saw the reporters, they're all wearing press badges and big feck off flak jackets. And I was like, okay, that's looking serious. They're backing normal clothes now. From last I saw the news about an hour ago or so. But it put it into that sort of context of these people are actually worried that those troops are getting close. I am surprised, though, that Russian troops aren't in Kiev yet. I'm just going to say Kiev because I hate saying it wrong. I know Kiev is wrong anyway, but still, everyone
It's
knows
all
what I
right.
mean. Yeah, I am surprised they're not in Kiev yet because what's Kiev, about 120 miles from the border? And I thought
It's
they'd
not
be
that
there
far.
by now.
yeah, you say that, Mr. Bartender, but I mean, a Russian T-74 can probably move at a maximum of probably about 50 to 60 miles before it realistically is going to run itself at risk of running out of fuel and stretching its lines logistically, if that makes sense to you guys.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I would say realistically, if you were just to look at time advance, I would say 3 to 4 days.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, you can go down the full hog of blitzkrieg like the Germans did to great effect in the Second World War. However, there's also huge risks when people do that. From a military perspective, you stretch your lines of communication, and you potentially put your logistic train behind you at huge risk. So it's also, whilst it can play massively into your hand, it can also be something that's very stupid to do. A little bit like what happened again when the Germans tried it a second time in the Second World War at the Battle of Bulge. If anybody knows what I'm referring to.
Yeah, bit of bad weather, cut out the British air support, tried to push through forward. Lack of fuel, which was the biggest downside for them. That's one of my favorite bits of the war. Obviously, I play a lot of Hearts of Irons to supply lines and things like that. I like, oh yeah, but no, I didn't think of that as a supply thing for them with it being such a short distance, I thought, well, a couple of supply things, because they're invading on so many fronts, and unfortunately, the Ukrainian army is spread over such a large area, that wasn't thinking of the resistance possibilities and things like that, which is, I'm happy to be wrong on things.
It's also a communication piece as well, because it's quite hard to orchestrate an invasion from more than one location as well, in terms of timings, distribution. I could go into great detail, but I'll be probably giving too much away if I did, so I'm not going to.
That's fine. I'm glad to have you here for that, to put in that modern
warfare.
Yeah. Good. My modern warfare comes from games. Colons is a few years behind, but basically, myself and Clapper. Well, as far as I know, Clapper, we're both civilians in that sort of regard. So you've
I would
not
say
got
I'm
a
quite
secret.
advanced in that regard.
Yeah, but I mean, you haven't got a secret military pass and military training that I don't know about.
No. Fuck that.
No, this has clearly been well planned and orchestrated for a number of months, I would say, in terms of how they're going about their business. And one thing we need to bear in mind with modern warfare is what we would call the grey space. So it's not just rolling in with big tanks and putting guard boots on the ground. It's how you can sap the morale of a population via social media, for one, cyber warfare, and just general infiltrating local governance through whatever means necessary. So propaganda, psyops, you name it, all those sort of things that I'm talking
politicians about. Abroad.
Yeah, all that. That's what they would describe as the grey space. So there's lots of little things to consider. It's not just a case of rolling in a bunch of T-70 tanks and and
plowing through.
There's so many things to consider when it comes to a modern invasion.
Yeah, I was going to say, Mr. M, you mentioned cyber warfare then, and I know you mentioned something offline. I don't know whether you wanted to mention it at all or not about cyber sort of stuff. I know it's not cyber warfare, but
I will. I'm not going to give too much game away. So
yeah, which is fine. That's why I didn't want to say anything.
I can fulfill that void.
Yeah, I'll just say there was a picture of me with a high-ranking official. Do you want me to carry on or stop?
Yeah, please. Sorry, Mr. M. There's a slight delay between us and Clapper.
There was a picture of me with a high-ranking official, probably within the last few years, and I'm not going to go into any more detail on that. But I got some very, very interesting people then somebody from that picture put my name or mentioned my name in that picture, and from that trail, I was getting people, random people, and all sorts, and people trying to track me down on certain apps. Again, probably from an Eastern Europe background. So I was, just from one little picture with a UK official, it was like, oh great, okay, thanks for that.
And it wasn't Russian brides either.
No, it wasn't, and it just goes to show, having terrible OPSEC from one person's individual mentioning my name, can potentially put other people at risk, which is why I've not mentioned any names or anything.
I've been very careful once the stream started. I know I mentioned your name before the stream started, and I will not do that again. But before the stream started, I'm relaxed. Oh, I won't.
Everything I've said is obtainable via open source. It's nothing new. It's there, and it's nothing that journalists would have probably said today, in some form of detail anyway. It's common sense.
Which is fair.
That's pretty. Okay.
I know Clapper wanted to make a point as Mr. M was doing the point about cyber warfare, so go to Clapper first.
Yeah. Not only just cyber warfare, but it's interesting, Mr. M, because the first thing that my country actually taught me, the first thing, is that being public, at all, ever, social media, messaging apps, something like VK, Facebook, all that stuff, should not be even your thing. You should never even touch that stuff. But that's you probably know all that stuff. I'm just saying it. I'm putting it out there for others, because I don't have anything. But some people can't trace me back to my YouTube channel. But I'm not afraid of that.
It depends how much you want to be traced or worried of being
Mhm.
traced. I mean, if people view you as a threat, then yeah, they're going to probably make your life difficult. But if you're not really a threat or not coming across as a threat, then you'll be left alone.
I get
It's,
that.
Okay.
it's who you
Yeah.
associate yourself with as well as what you put or how much you reveal yourself on social media is probably what I would say about that.
It's also about the way that you conduct yourself. Because, for example, in my country, when I went to prison and got out, they knew everything about me. And
Yes.
I left a paper trail, like digital trail of myself via my email address, because my dumbass haven't thought this one through. Because the cat that my parents owned was dying, and I had to take care of it, and I took it to a vet, and they asked me to sign up for their like discount services, whatever, and they asked me for my email. And because every single thing in my country is like recorded, I gave them my email, and I was like, oh no, what have I done? They know.
Yeah.
They know that I've been at that freaking vet hospital now. They probably can come and like ask for security footage, and then they will see me, and then they will know what I did.
That's
It's a little bit paranoid, but this is the kind of like, it's a network. You need to understand that you need to be able to do that ahead of time and plan it. To undercut it and make sure that that's not even going to leak into the internet ever.
That is a scary world.
That is
Colon,
Yeah.
I know you were trying to get in with a point before.
Well, just to go on one of the things that was you popped up on the screen about Russians, and well, not just Russians, but any military person
That
ending
was the
up in a
next
body
point I was
bag and
gonna
coming
make,
back. Yeah, that's actually possibly happened today, because apparently they were running battles in Chernobyl.
yes, they took over.
Yeah, they took over the Chernobyl area, but the Ukrainians were fighting back in that area, and obviously that's the place that blew up on your birthday.
It was,
Yeah.
blew up on the day I was born.
Yeah.
I was going to say that's perfect time for that, because it's the same point I was going to bring up. Manolist 23-100 brought up the same point. Soldiers in bags, though, won't change anything, sadly. Every war has dead soldiers and innocents. Yes, it does. As we've seen on, and we always have to be thingy with news reports and things, the general Russian public aren't behind the war in Ukraine. So to see more Russian soldiers coming back dead and have that effect on the general public is going to vastly, I think, sway Russian public support. The
Yeah,
only thing
definitely.
is, though, does anyone on the panel think it will change Putin in the way of support for this? Because I don't know about you, but I don't feel like Putin's ever had a how should we put this, fair election.
Never.
No comment.
Fair enough,
Personal-
Mr. M.
Yeah, personally,
No,
I don't think he
yeah.
cares.
No.
It's hearts and minds of the Russian public. Yes, that will be affected. Hearts and minds of the Ukrainian, the European public, that will be affected. But Putin, no, not a chance.
Yeah, you all make good points there. I mean, the average Russian soldier, he's probably going to be professional in what he does, and he'll carry out his orders within reason to full effect. However, at some point, the public opinion will shift, as it did with Iraq and Afghanistan to a degree with us. People don't want to see British soldiers in body bags, and I can imagine the same would be, I mean, I do think that Russia would probably, how can I put it, wouldn't allow it to get out there as much as, say, maybe our Western media would. What
No.
do you guys think of that?
They control their media completely,
Yeah.
and they pretty much eliminate every single bit of information that is attempting to get out. That's why they demanded that Telegram would bring their servers back to Russia, and pretty much force the guy that was like in exile to do that somehow. I don't know how. Maybe they paid him. Maybe they
That's
didn't.
nuts.
Interesting point.
As much as I'll moan about BBC, as I've done tonight, saying, I don't know what we can trust on that. We do have the choice of BBC, Sky News, ITV. I can go to CNN because
GB
we're
News.
GB News. I can go to Al Jazeera on news through Sky and Freeview and things like that.
We can even follow RT today if we want to.
Yeah, we've got
Alex Salmond.
for as much as we'll moan about one point of news, we've got so many sources we can pull from and no restrictions on who we can pull from. There was a point here about nukes. Where did it go? Nimrod. Very sorry, Nimrod. War is one thing, but I hope to pray all existence God that nobody decides to use nukes. Personally, I can't ever see if the war just stays in the Ukraine. I can see it ever going to nukes because there's no reason to, if that makes sense. But also, I can't see Putin, as crazy as he is and as annoying and crazy as he seems, I can't see him wanting to nuke anyone because, as we know from history, Mr. M, that would just be mad.
It would be mad, and I think there was that quote from Mr. Putin where he said World War III would be fought with blah, 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 but World War IV would be fought with sticks and stones. So,
yeah,
you know, and that is a well-known quote out there. So hopefully, you know, he does have some thought in that head of his that not really, you know, go down that road. And I think as long as people are prepared to stick to their, well, I say that stick to the lines, you know, draw the lines and not cross the lines, then and stick to more conventional methods, then hopefully we don't go down that road. God forbid we go down that road. Doesn't even bear thinking about.
No, it's a scary. It's one of those I saw on the news report today that up until 1994, the Ukraine had the third largest nuclear arsenal in all of Europe.
Yeah,
and I was like, okay, and they got rid of them.
Memorandum.
Yeah.
Yeah, good point, actually.
Yeah, this is a war I can't see ever going to, even if NATO got involved, because I don't see NATO, not to be rude to NATO, I don't see them pushing past the borders of countries that have been taken by Russia. They wouldn't invade Russia as a whole.
No.
Correct.
Yeah, I think the panel seems to agree, though, which is quite nice. So, like, yay, people agree. Because I feel like that would be that pushing point that would push, as Galen Thurber says there, only if Putin is pushed into a final retreat. And it is that scary thing that we could never push Russia to that point at the moment, because there's nothing
Nuclear
to sort
weapons.
of push past nukes. Nukes is that end point. Until someone... Oh, go on.
There's actually something that can be a little bit more powerful than nukes. And it's been discussed in social media like a lot when Putin attacked and et cetera, et cetera. The elites. The people that Putin was feeding from his own hand, allowing them to steal, thieve, and become billionaires, and then buy themselves mansions and send their kids on to an adventure into Europe to have fun and live life to the fullest, because obviously Russia is shit. And it's not really great to do that. And if, say, he resorts to nukes, he would be putting his own children at risk and the children of his cronies. And right now, for example, it was discussed to take away all of their belongings, their mansions, their flats, their everything, their money, freeze everything, expel them, cancel their citizenships, visas, everything, kick their ass out. And this would actually provoke the elites to turn back on Putin. And that's far more scary than nuclear weapons to him.
That's a really, really good point. And that's fantastic. And it's probably one of the most important points this evening. The true way you would get maybe the West are trying to push for a leadership change. I don't know. It's just a really good point you make in terms of the elites and how much control they actually have on the political spectrum within Russia. Yeah,
oligarchs. Correct.
I believe I saw last on the news, we've got 100 individuals now from Russia are under sanctions just from the UK alone.
Correct.
Whereas any money in this country of theirs is now being basically, well, you're not having access to that, and that could push a lot towards, as we say then, a regime change. We've only got about
the script.
Sorry, 1 second. We've only got about 5 minutes left on this because I'm limited to about an hour. For anyone who's more interested in this, I'll push it now. The Shills has got a stream coming up at midnight, so another hour after this on the Shills channel. I did have the link. I didn't copy it properly. Yeah, Clapperjack's going to be on that one again, which is going to be really interesting to watch. Unfortunately, I have to get back to a pub. It is one of those ones of like, I need to do this because it's something that needs to be talked about. We'll do some last minute points of if anyone's got any questions, tag us now. For anyone who wants to talk about this, you got Clapperjack from Belarus, you got Mr. M, a serving person, you got me and Colon, who are just crazy. Colon slightly more sane than me.
And X-Bill. He keeps forgetting that.
As well, yeah.
Well, just a quick one then on my side of it. On the sideline to all of this, if we've got Russian oligarchs and there are two major ones in the football scene. So I wonder how Chelsea's feeling tonight and Arsenal.
No, I don't care about Chelsea.
Well, of course you won't.
Neither do I.
Right.
Right.
Clive, well,
going with that,
brought that point up.
Yeah, going with that as well. Let's roll over because there was the Champions League now is a final is being moved from St. Petersburg, but away from Russia. So there's a lot of shit coming down, even on the sporting side already. But that's extra shite.
As a closing point, stepping away from war bits, how much do the panel think that this will affect Russia's political role over the next 10, 15 years when it comes to sporting events or anything like that? Things that do generate large amount of money for the country as a whole, things that Russia does rely on. And yes, they've got their gas and oil, and Europe have made they've made notes about it, as we've seen today, that we're ready to step away from that. Do we think that Russia's going to be slightly pooping itself if they do, and if they lose all these sport things, not so much for the money, but the prestige behind it all, that they're becoming a pariah country?
In the upcoming 30 plus years, nobody's going to trust them, like about anything. Like even the most basic things that like a Russian is going to say, everybody's just going to take it like with a massive grain of salt. They've been cheating on the Olympics constantly, and they've been caught again this time around as well. Granted, it was marijuana, which isn't really all that significant, but still.
I know all about Russian drug cheats, but I'm not going to go into any more detail because it'll give away who I am.
Fair enough.
There was a couple of others. There's been a couple of other ones that was actually tested positive on sideline on athletes and other substances which aren't exactly illegal, but are performance enhancing to some extent. They're boostings.
You've got to take a step back and look at the bigger picture. Everything Russia does, or certainly going back to the state-driven USSR, when they put ridiculously strong teams in the Olympics, it was always about projecting that power, that we are dominant. I mean, you even got a little bit of that in the Rocky IV film. It's a good example, if you know what I'm referring to. So, I mean, I'd say China is now almost stepping into that role as well, with how they were in the Beijing Olympics. It's an interesting one, and how a country or a superpower will try and use that stereotypical influence to sort of spread how their influence is.
I know before that the chat mentioned it, I can't remember if the panel mentioned it, but obviously we're looking at Russia invading Ukraine, a smaller country. Does anyone think that China will be watching this sort of view and looking at Taiwan going, do we risk it? And do we think that China would be as well? Yes, watching it. Do we think
they're definitely watching?
Do we think that China would suffer worse from the same economic sanctions, giving China's huge growth of economy, which is very much more world dependent rather than European dependent like Russia's is?
Yes, but it would also backfire and affect us in terms of what we get imported to us.
Exactly. Yeah. Not just you, but Europe.
Oh, yes.
Because, for example, I've been looking just now before going onto the stream. I need parts for my e-bike. And guess who makes those parts? The e-bike parts are made by China, and only China. There's nowhere to be found in Europe. So, yeah.
See, there you go, Papa Jack.
That's just one
making them.
That is just one little bit of thing. It's massive. It's huge. It spans over massive industries.
To be the devil's advocate here,
Go on.
A certain T. Rump probably had a good idea in trying to bring a lot of businesses back from China and to sanction them in this
Correct.
vein so that they could actually rebuild and be able to provide for themselves.
Yeah.
Intel are actually are building their own manufacturing site now back in America, but it's still going to cost them a hell of a lot to do.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
As a closing point, because we're coming up to the end of the show here, yes, I agree that bringing merchandise and production and things away from China and other countries, so India and things as well, other Asian countries where labor is cheap and it can be produced cheaply, is a good thing to support the economies of our own country. But do we feel like the citizens of our own country are going to put up with the prices they would then have to pay for the increased cost of labor? And are we just shooting ourselves in the foot with people who aren't going to do it? If that makes sense as a point, I think it does.
Maybe it's a case of we've had it too good for too long. It's time to actually realize what we should be doing for reality.
Which
I
is,
would say, in comparison to other places like mine, I don't know, having 10, 20, 30 bucks extra on top of your products is not going to be that much of a difference.
that's a good point. Mr. M, any points on that one?
No, I think guys made good points there. You know, you can try and go down the self-sufficient hog route of an economy, but ultimately, you still need that trade piece.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we got time. One last closing point for everyone to get a point in. Do we feel like becoming a world economy is a good thing because of bringing us all together as one world and the possibility? I'm going to get so many flat earthers looking at this video. One world and one nation under the world and one world government could be a good thing, and just having trade between interregions could be a better thing for global stability.
I would say yes, but we're not there yet. We're
fair enough.
hundreds of years away, maybe a couple of hundreds.
I could agree with that. Mr. M?
Yeah.
I think you need a balance. I think I could go on about the World Economic Forum. I've got my opinions, but I think you need a balance. You definitely, if everyone's trading and there's a good balance there and everyone's happy, that can only be a good thing in terms of world peace and all that good stuff that goes with it. But the problem is everyone's always got their own set out for their own agenda, and whilst the world's in that mindset, unfortunately, you're always going to have that instability. So I personally don't think it's ever going to 100% work.
Yep.
Fair enough.
Yeah, I'll agree with both of those and go with the final thing that some asshole's always going to be out there for himself.
Yep.
Which is fair enough. I'll close the point on a post just done by Johnny Ragado. And the problem with the one world government is how much of Putin's philosophy do you want in your government? I distrust a blend, which sounds like a good point. So the Shields are doing another stream on this later on, another hour or so. If anyone wants to join that, the link was posted earlier on. I'm sure others will post it. If not, you all know the Shields channel. You're my regular subscribers, hopefully, with a couple of new ones. Thank you very much to everyone who's here. But Mr. M, thank you very much for joining me. Hopefully we can do this again because you raised some awesome points on there. Clapperjack, as always, you are brilliant. Colon, thank you very much for keeping me sane on all of this and raising some awesome points yourself, because that was really good. I get to say this now, which DKG raised earlier. Hopefully we'll see you all next Tuesday, rather than just the see you next Tuesday. We'll do a stream probably on Tuesday about the same sort of stuff. Colon, if you're up for that, we'll launch it about 9 o'clock.
Yeah, 9 o'clock, and we'll actually see you next Tuesday then.
Yeah, we'll do it. Well, I think we'll title it as, if we can do the event whenever you want, as a hopefully we'll see you next Tuesday. Mr. M, if you want to join us for a stream about 9 o'clock next Tuesday, you're more than welcome. If not, it'll be me and Colon chatting bits. Clapperjack, if you're free to join us again. And we'll see where the weekend takes these events, because I think these next few days are going to be very, very interesting and very scary.
Yep.
I completely agree with you, Mr. Bartender. I said with what I mentioned earlier, time will tell. And from what I'm seeing right now, the Ukrainians are starting to put up some really fierce resistance. And certainly what I'm seeing in our media. I mean, time will clearly tell, but it's going to be very interesting.
Yeah. If you do join us, Mr. M, and you have any other information that obviously you're allowed to give us, that would be much appreciated. Otherwise, we'll stick to news stuff and things like that. But thank you all three for joining us, and we'll see you on the next one. Thank you very much to all the members, patrons, subscribers, even people who just press the like button. You all make these streams possible, and we'll see you on the next one. Thank you very much, and
drop a
good
comment.
night.
Tell us
Yeah,
what you
drop a
think.
comment. Leave any questions for Tuesday. We'll try and bring them up. Even if Clapperjack or Mr. M can't go on stream, I'll try and send some messages, try and just get some more information, if possible, from both of them. But thank you very much. And here's the outro where none of us are muted for anyway.
Oh, not again.
Do
I
svidania,
haven't-
comrades.
I'm sure I have actually loaded this in. I just haven't done it properly.
And you didn't put music on it.
Oh,
There is music.
I know.
Oh.
Don't worry about it. Let's just go with it. Do, 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 do.